What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about all things hydration. Well, at least all things hydration on a long distance hike of the Appalachian Trail. And the things that I learned. And I did have one game changer that actually completely changed my hike once I discovered this that I will go over. But we'll do it as I dehydrate myself. As normal. But let's get started. The first thing I'm going to go over is water filtration. That's how I chose to turn non-drinkable water into water that's safe to drink, is to filter. You do have the option to treat water chemically, but I've got to say that's pretty uncommon on the trail, at least anymore. Maybe it used to be more popular, but we'll go over a little bit more of that as we go. So what I used was the Sawyer Squeeze. This guy here. It's undoubtedly the most common water filter on all of the Appalachian Trail among long distance and through hikers. I really liked it. It does have a cousin, or a little brother, I guess you could say, the Sawyer Mini, which I saw more in the beginning. People started upgrading to the Sawyer Squeeze, and I would have to guess that the biggest reason for that is because the Sawyer Mini would clog up far faster than the Sawyer Squeeze. And, I do own the Mini. It's great to have. It pretty much stays in my truck if I ever end up in a situation that I need to be able to filter water in order to drink. I've got a Sawyer Mini. I like this filter, but for a long distance hike, I would recommend, maybe shying away from it. The applications that I did see the Sawyer Mini in, and one thing that you're not going to be able to do with the Sawyer Squeeze, at least that I know of, maybe you can rig something up, but that you can pretty easily do with the Sawyer Mini, is use it on a water bladder. This is a Camelback water bladder here. This thing holds 3 liters of water. It's great for mountain biking. I would say not so great for hiking. And there's 2 main downsides to it. The first downside to it is going to be that it's very hard to kind of know exactly how much water you have as you're drinking it. I mean, you can get a good idea based on what you're drinking, your consumption and all that, but you're never going to know really exactly how much you have without opening up your pack and really looking at it and figuring it out. Most packs in this day and age do have like a slit somewhere cut in it for the tube of a hydration bladder to go through. So it's a very, reasonable option. However, I didn't really see much of this on the trail. I really would shy away from it if I was you for that reason. And then the second reason is that if you were to get a puncture in this water bladder, this is inside your bag with all of your other contents. Now, yes, you can keep, this on the outside of your pack liner, basically have your pack is one wall, have the water bladder, and then the pack liner as the inner wall. So you could offer yourself a little more protection that way. But if you did get a puncture in that thing for whatever reason, you could potentially have a mess on your hands and have some wet gear, and wet gear is not a good thing to have. You all know that already. So, that's 2 reasons. The 2 reasons I wouldn't really recommend that for a long distance hike. If you're out for a day hike, sure, it's a great thing. Mountain biking, awesome for mountain biking. But a through hike, I don't know. It does hold a lot of water. It's nice. It's got a nice big opening where you can fill it with water. So it is nice, but for a long distance hike, like I said, not something that I would really personally recommend. But with the Sawyer Mini, the benefit of that is you can actually fill this hydration bladder with dirty water, and then you can plumb the Sawyer Mini in line. You just cut this tubing off of the hydration bladder, and it fits pretty well. There's even a kit you can get that makes it work with several different size tubes that you just have the water filter in line, and you drink right out of it. You drink dirty water. However, that does not do anything to make this filter not clog up any faster because you're still pulling dirty water from your bladder. So anyways, that's one application for the Sawyer Mini. The other one that I saw, this was far more common than the water bladder, is people would just screw it right on top of a smart water bottle. Now this I can see, it's pretty reasonable to do. It does fit, the threads are the same. You can fit it right on top of a smart water bottle. and it works really well. You can drink right out of it. Now, the big reason why the two big reasons why I didn't use this particular system is one, the filter clogs up quite fast. You're having to backwash it pretty regularly compared to the Sawyer Squeeze, the larger size. And for two, I like to have my water filtered because I kind of chug water. I like, if I get thirsty, I like to just, slam even a half liter all at once. You can't really do that with this. You have to wait. It's filtering as you're drinking. And it's not that bad of a flow rate. I mean, it's reasonable to drink out of it, but it's not something that you're going to be able to kind of chug water. And that's just how I personally drink water. So, I mean, it's not a bad filter. Don't get me wrong. It's not a bad filter by any stretch. It's just not the filter that I chose to use. And I'm giving you the reasons why. It's a good filter. Just for a long distance hike, it just simply clogs up far faster than the Sawyer Squeeze. And, for the weight difference, which is a very small difference, I would recommend carrying the full-size Sawyer Squeeze. So, the Sawyer Squeeze, I really liked. Not without flaws, but it works out really well. Now, this red piece that you see on top of it is a tornado tube. This just is basically a coupling that couples the Sawyer Squeeze water filter to a water bottle so that I could easily filter my water. And then this whole arrangement would go on top of a dirty water bag. Now, your bottles that you use are always going to hold only clean water. Don't ever put dirty water in them unless you absolutely have to, and always keep one bottle that is for clean water only. Sometimes if you have a bladder failure, you may have to sacrifice a clean water bottle. That's all good. That's just a part of hiking. But always keep at least one bottle absolutely clean. But yeah, it just screws right on top of here. And it makes it really simple to filter water down into it. So you get the point. It's really easy to do. There's not much to it. As you see, I didn't have to collapse this bottle and let all the air out of it prior to filling it up like you would have to do if you were using there's a little blue coupling that Sawyer makes, and that's actually designed to clean to backwash your water filter. It matches up. However, you have to collapse. It does not allow air through like this tornado tube does. And I'll put links to all of this stuff in the description so you can check it out if you're interested in getting it or doing more research on it. It'll all be there. But it, like I said, the Sawyer coupling doesn't do anything for you as far as allowing water, because obviously, when you add water to a bottle, you have to displace that air. The air has to go somewhere. So through this coupling, the air is allowed to escape and be replaced with water. You don't have to crumble your bottles. It makes the bottles last a lot longer, and it's just easier to deal with. So, speaking of water bottles, I would highly recommend using smart water bottles. And you've probably heard this 100 times if you've done any kind of research about hydration on the AT or on a long distance hike in general. They're really good. The threads do match up very well with the ever new water bladders, the bladders that come with the Sawyer Squeeze. They're all the same thread pattern. Now, a couple of years ago, you could use a platypus bladder, like this one. However, platypus, for whatever reason, decided that they were going to change the threads. I've got a good idea of why they did it. They had gotten into a different water system, and we'll get into that in a minute. But yeah, all the threading works out really well with smart water bottles. These things are very strong, like scary strong. This bottle here, I actually had for over 6 months on the trail. The whole time I was on the trail, I had this exact bottle. I started with this bottle. So that's a testament to just how durable these are. I used it that long. It worked out really well. And I would replace the caps now. You have to get these smaller bottles. They do sell a smaller 700 milliliter size. I carried two 100 milliliters, and I kept the 700 milliliter. This is my whiskey and wine bottle, but I robbed the flip top cap off of, and that's what you see here. Here's another one here. I just liked having the flip top cap. It worked out really well. You will have to replace the caps every now and then because the little hinge right here will eventually break. But that again is one of those things that's so strong that it'll surprise you. Just use smart water bottles. You know, I was telling you about the tornado tube, which is this little coupling here. One thing I will tell you, you'll find a lot of on the trail is bottles similar to smart water bottles, and they are Life Water. There was one time when Stuck Norris, who used this exact setup that I have here, he was using a Life Water bottle, and there must be something slightly different with the threading because the tornado tube actually got stuck to it at one point, and it became a little bit of a problem. We got it off. However, that's just something to keep in mind. But those are good bottles as well. For the most part, they work out pretty great, and they're very available. Pretty much any grocery store, gas station, almost any stop that you can buy supplies is going to have either smart water bottles or Life Water bottles. So I do recommend picking those up. I always carried, like I said, 2 of the 1 liter variety, and then I carried a 700 milliliter variety. That's not necessary, but hey, that's how I packed out whiskey or wine, whatever I could get my hands on when I left town. And then if I had a bladder failure, I could use it as an extra, you know, water carrying container, you know, in order to have a little bit more capacity in the event of a bladder failure, which did happen to me once on the trail. So when you buy the Sawyer Squeeze and when you buy the Sawyer Mini, you're going to get a plunger. Do not take this plunger, baste a turkey with it, figure something else out to do with it. Don't use this thing. It's unnecessary space and weight. And the reason for that is because this Sawyer, let's see, I just filtered water. That's why we got water here. But this Sawyer, on the one end of it that you would need to backwash the filter to clean it, which is something you're going to want and need to do when you get into town. And you're going to forget about it every time you get into town because you'll have fresh running tap water. And that's the ideal time to do it because you have to use clean water to backwash this filter. That should go without saying. But the reason for that is because you're reversing the flow of the filter. Once you send the water in the direction that it's normally going to filter water, some of that water you're using to backwash will get pushed back into your clean water bottles. So you have to do this with clean water. But once you have clean water, say you're in town, you fill up your smart water bottle with tap water or whatever in your hotel room, it very easily just pushes right on there. Look at that. Multiple camera angles. This is, yeah. This is a high quality production. You know, if George Lucas, if you come across this production because it's so high quality, hit me up. I got a question for you about Chewbacca, and you won't return my emails. So, yeah, it works out really well. All you have to do is squeeze like about 1 liter of water is sufficient. You'll see it be really dirty coming out of there as you do the backwash. And I basically would always just do it until the water ran clear. And usually 1 liter of clean water did the trick. So, something else that you need to have on the trail, absolutely no questions asked, is a way to get water with a scoop. Always keep a scoop. All this is where I've cut off the bottom of a smart water bottle. It works really well. This was a bottle that I had to get. It was a 700 milliliter bottle. I had to get to rob the cap off of anyway. So instead of just throwing the whole bottle away, I would use the scoop. And you will want to replace the caps a little more frequently than the bottles. And like I said, they do break at the hinge, but they get kind of nasty because there's a lot of little areas that are hard to keep clean. So that's something you're going to want to do relatively regularly. At least I did and I do. But anyways, always have a water scoop. There's no reason not to. There's going to be plenty of water sources that you get to that it's absolutely necessary. That's the only way you're going to gather water is with a scoop. Now, if you mess around and forget your scoop or lose your scoop or whatever, you should always have extra Ziploc bags in your food bag anyways. You can always use that. But the reason you would use a scoop like this over a Ziploc bag just normally, since you're already carrying Ziploc bags, is simply because you need 2 hands in most cases to, you know, keep, like here's a Ziploc bag here to, you know, you gather your water to actually get it poured in reasonably. You're going to need 2 hands, and then you've got to figure out how to keep your bottle stable. You may have to worry about sitting down, putting it between your knees. That's just way more work than is necessary. Just carry a little scoop. It's really easy to do, and I always just, you know, you can actually cut a notch in this thing And this bottle's so blown out that it won't fit over it. But if you cut a little notch in it, you can put it over the bottle and pull it off. But the way I used it was I actually kept my water bladder and water filter in here and kept it next to a clean water bottle on the outside of my pack, and it worked really well. But for a long time before I did that, like I said, I just cut a little notch into it, and I was able to fit it over the bottom of one of these so it didn't take up any more space. And I could just pull it off when I got to a water source that required a scoop. So that's something to definitely keep in mind. So the next thing we'll talk about is water bladders. The water bladder that's going to come with your Sawyer filter is going to be one of these. This one here is 1 quart. When it's overflowed here, yeah, it'll do a liter. It's only 1.8 ounce difference between a quart and a liter. So this is good, basically a liter. They make them bigger, they make them smaller. 1 liter is a good size for a bag. 2 liters is even better. 1.5 liters is great. I mean, just figure out what you need for water carrying capacity and work with that. But this is 1 liter. It's going to come with the water filter that you buy, most likely. Most arrangements do. They are not good bags, and that's fine because I would rather them sell the filter cheaper and not worry about the bag so much. But it will fail right here at the very top. It's going to fail, and it's going to fail relatively fast. I mean, it may get you from Springer Mountain to Neal Gap, but I mean, it's worth at least using. I mean, if you got it, it's better than just throwing it away. Use it or give it away to somebody that's not reliant upon it as much as you are on, say, a through hike or a very long distance hike of the trail. But it comes with it, so like I said, it's worth using. I never used this. I had experiences in the past, so I knew that this was going to fail very fast. So I just cut through the mess and went with an Evernew bladder. These are relatively expensive for what they are. You have to get them online. I'll put a link to them in the description. Like I said, everything will be in there. And I bought these on Amazon. My water carrying capacity was always, for dirty water anyways, this 2 liter bladder, which I primarily used. And then I carried a 1.5 liter bladder just as a secondary bladder if I was going to do a dry camp or, you know, camping not at a water source, or if I had a long distance between water sources. It happened more than once. I really, use this. You can tell it's getting pretty nasty, but it worked out really well. Now, these are not perfect. They will eventually fail. It took about 5 months of continuous use for my Evernew bladder to fail, whereas my buddy I was hiking with stuck north had been through about 4 of the Sawyer Squeeze bags. So keep that in mind. To me, it was worth the extra money because the Sawyer Squeeze bags, you do have to buy them. You know, it does come with the one, so it's all good to use it, but you're going to have to buy and replace it with something else in the event of a failure. So it may just be worth spending the extra money going with the Evernew. For me, just peace of mind, making things easy. I really liked it. It worked out really well. And that was my carrying capacity. And then I also had the 700 milliliter whiskey wine bottle in the event of the failure. When I did have a failure, I was able to just use that, sacrifice it and use it as a dirty water bottle. And with the tornado tube, because this filter is threaded the same both ways, you can filter from bottle to bottle. It's really simple to do. All right, we'll use this one because there was water in that one. But you would have dirty water in the bottom bottle there, based on the flow. And you could just squeeze this and filter your water into the clean water bottle. It worked out really well. Really simple to do. So if you had to and you're not carrying a extra bottle, you could just sacrifice one of your clean water bottles. And that's a big reason I would carry more than one clean water bottle, at a time. But anyways, really liked these bladders. It worked out really well. I really like platypus bladders as well. And I think I should mention this. They changed their thread pattern, like I said earlier. And I think the big reason for that is because they had come out with this gravity system. So they wanted to use a proprietary thread so that you couldn't use other filters with it. And the gravity systems are just heavy. And don't use a gravity system on a long distance hike. You can actually, with this simple coupling, pretty much turn the your normal bladder into a gravity system. The very first bladder I had, I used a hole punch and punched 2 holes into it and had 550 cord, and I could hang it on a tree and just give it a quick squeeze. And yeah, it's much slower than squeezing it yourself, but it will gravity feed. You don't need to carry all that extra tubing and weight, and trust me, it's unnecessary for a long distance hike. So Platypus had that, and for whatever reason, like I said, they did their proprietary threads for that. I think it's silly. It had to cut into their business because most people are using Sawyer filters. So it is what it is. I would much rather buy my bladders from a company like Platypus, that is an American company in Seattle, than buy my bladder from the internet and have it come from Japan. That's just how I feel about it. But these bladders work out really well, so it's all good. You know, I just think Platypus should probably rethink letting a Sawyer thread onto there, because I would have patronized that company over, you know, you know what I mean. It is what it is. So one thing you need to keep in mind with filtering, with say something like the Sawyer Squeeze, same with the Sawyer Mini, they're both a 0.1 micron hollow membrane filter, and something that can be a big downside to that is that once you have used this filter and there's been water in it at any point in time, because you're never going to get all of the water out of it once you get started. Once you get started with this filter, you can never let it freeze. Once you let it freeze, the water inside the hollow membranes at 0.1 micron are going to expand. It's going to tear the membrane, and you no longer have a 0.1 micron filter. You have a filter that's going to let all these diseases and viruses and all that kind of stuff come right through it. That is a bad thing. So you have to keep these filters from freezing. Now, early in the trail, I started early March in Georgia. Freezing was a problem. At night, it regularly got into freezing temperatures, below 32 degrees Fahrenheit. What you need to do with your filter, you need to do 2 things. So with your filter, you need to keep it from freezing. And the way that I and most people did that is I always put it, because you can see there's water here. No matter how much water you get out of it, there'll always be some. I always put it in a Ziploc bag. And for me personally, I put this in the foot of my sleeping bag. And that's another reason why I like the design of my sleeping bag so much. It's because the foot box stayed permanent. I could stick it in there and it never would leave. It's not like it had anywhere to escape. It could stay in the foot box of my sleeping bag. But if you don't have that option, if you're wearing a jacket or something like that, you can always put it in a pocket, you know, a side pocket, if you have a chest pocket, whatever. Keep it close to your body, keep it warm. That'll keep it from freezing. So, at some point, it may freeze. Something may happen. It may fall out of your pocket, somehow come out of the foot box of your sleeping bag. What do you do then? You always need to have a backup, and that's why I say you need to do 2 things. So, there are 2 things you can do as far as backup's concerned. And let's see here. The first thing, and this is what I carried, was these just little tablets. They're little aqua tabs, and you put one of these. It basically is it's a sodium. Let's see here, sodium chlorite tablet. So it basically adds chlorine to the water, or bleach, you know, kind of a solution. And the only problem with them is that they take 4 hours to treat your water appropriately. So keep that in mind. That's why I used them as a backup only. But they were good to have for freezing. I actually kept these the whole time, just in the event that I ran into a water source that required treating, and I'll get to that a little bit, you know, when we get into water sources. But this is what I carried. It's better to me than carrying, you know, the Aquamira, which is a 2-part system, and you got 2 liquids, and I'm sure those liquids have the propensity to freeze. They may freeze at a lower temperature. I don't know. I didn't do any research on that, but it probably doesn't ruin those if they freeze. Surely when they thaw out, they'll be fine, you know, once you mix them back up. But this is what I carried. Just small, super lightweight, really inexpensive. I actually just picked these up at an REI in Atlanta right before I left for the trail. So that's one option. And the other option, a hiker that I met in Maine switched to this permanently as his water treatment solution. And he just took a little eye drop bottle. This is just for, you know, your contact lenses to keep your eyes, yeah, you know what, you know, just a little Renew hydrating dropper. You can pick these up just about anywhere. It's just a sterile saline solution, so you can either use it if you got contacts or empty it out. You know, if you don't have contacts, you don't have any other use for it, empty it out, rinse it out really good, and just fill it with household bleach. And according to the EPA, in an emergency situation, what is required to treat your water to make it safe would be for 1 liter of water, 2 drops of household bleach, which is sodium hypochlorite at about a 5% mixture of chlorine to water. And, you know, because it is a base, it's got a high pH, it will not freeze at as high of a temperature. It's got a lower freezing temperature, and a byproduct of making sodium hypochlorite out of chlorine gas and water is salt, which again has a high pH, and it doesn't freeze. You know, salt water doesn't freeze at the same temperature that just normal non-salt water does. So I want to say with 5% bleach, it's going to freeze at something like 19 or 20 degrees. So it offers you like 12 or 13 degrees more before it freezes. And again, once it freezes, let it thaw out, mix it up. You've got a way to treat your water to at least get you to the next town. Some people actually use this. Like I said, the reason I found out about this was a hiker told me that he switched to this permanently as water treatment when he was in Pennsylvania. I didn't do that because the water tastes so good coming out of the springs. I didn't want it tasting like bleach. And a lot of the ways to treat your water, there's a couple of downsides to that. The taste, it does give it an off taste, and just that nice filtered spring water tastes so delicious. Trust me, you want to experience that. And two, when you use something like this, you're not getting like all of the sediment. Like say something's floating around in the water, whether it's, you know, broken leaves or whatever kind of vegetation that's in the water, you know, you're not filtering that out, so you could have stuff still in the water. Now, yeah, you can use like a bandana that you keep clean at all times. But again, you're just getting into something that's way more complicated than I'm willing to deal with. But some people found just using sodium hypochlorite, just household bleach, to be totally acceptable and good, and they liked it. So it's better than not treating your water. So let's see here. Basically what we're down to is all the stuff that I carried for my hydration. Well, without the beer. I did sometimes, but not in a pint glass. But anyways, what I carried myself, and I found that worked really well, and I'll continue to do it. And when I go back and do the other part of the AT that I didn't do, I'll be bringing this with me. I'm going to bring 2 1-liter Smart Water bottles, complete with flip caps. A 700 milliliter Smart Water bottle, or 1 liter, doesn't really matter to me, for whiskey or wine or whatever I can pack out of town, and just as a built-in redundancy. Definitely a scoop to scoop water, a bladder, and this is actually the cap off of my 700 milliliter bottle, but I forgot to mention this. You're going to want to carry at least 1 extra cap somewhere. It doesn't have to be a flip top, but if one of the flip top caps, say you drop it and it breaks off, it's good to just have something to get you to the next town to get something else, you know, get something else out. But anyways, 2 liter Evernew bladder, 1.5 liter Evernew bladder for dirty water, Sawyer Squeeze water filter, the tornado tube to couple it from the filter to my water bottles, and then always a Ziploc bag in the event that I lose my scoop breaks, whatever it is, and if I'm dealing with freezing temperatures, to keep my Sawyer Squeeze in, you know, to keep it from getting water into my sleeping bag. So I'm going to go ahead and get some more beer. Then we're going to get into the next part of this video, which is going to be about water sources as well as staying hydrated on the AT. So give me a second, I'll be right back. All right, I made it back. So now let's talk about water sources. Water sources, at least on the southern half of the AT, seem to be just about everywhere until you needed a water source. But a lot of that, I gotta say, a good amount of that was because of poor planning on my part, not really paying attention to the guidebook. And beyond the guidebook, I really liked having the Gut Hook app for water sources more than anything, because so many of them are seasonal. And in the Gut Hook app, you can get almost real-time updates from other hikers on the condition of that water source. Whereas if you're just using the guidebook, well, you've got a water droplet that's half full and you know it's seasonal, not to necessarily rely on it. But it was cool in the Gut Hook app on the seasonal ones to see whether or not it was flowing. And sometimes it would say that it was flowing 2 days ago when it wasn't. And the reason for that was because, yeah, maybe it rained 3 days ago and it was just a pretty dry source and it dried up within a day. There was one source right out of Damascus, Virginia that I remember for sure. I went and got water at it. I went past where I camped, got water at it, and when I crossed over it again, it was a spring. The next morning, there was no water. So it can be temperamental, so keep that in mind, especially on the temporary or the seasonal water sources, not necessarily the reliable sources, but there were even reliable sources marked in the guidebook that weren't necessarily reliable. They were dry when we got there. It's just a lot of the water in the mountains is a very seasonal thing because, it relies on rain to fill the springs and let them flow, and snow melt, to create a lot of water. So keep that in mind. But I do recommend definitely pay attention to your guidebook. But I really liked Gut Hook probably more than anything. I mean, it was a more realistic version of the, topography of the trail than the guidebook was, because you could zoom in and out and kind of get a better idea of exactly how steep stuff was going to be. But I really liked the feature that I could get almost real-time updates from other hikers on water sources. So anyway, I'm getting off track. Get the Gut Hook app. And I liked the guide too. I used them both in tandem. That's a whole nother video. But anyways, the water sources were relatively good. Now, something you need to keep in mind, I filtered water. You just saw that. I filtered it. I did keep a chemical treatment as a backup. And there were times where a chemical treatment would have really come in handy, that I had the opportunity to use it, but I didn't want to wait 4 hours to disinfect water. By that time, I could have hiked to a different water source in most cases. But it's always good to have a chemical treatment on hand just in case, like, you really just need to stop somewhere and it's a place you need to treat water. And those are in the south, few and far between, but the ones I remember, and usually they'll tell you about that in the guidebook as well as in Gut Hook. And when I say guidebook, I'm talking about the AWOL AT guide. So, most of the time they'll tell you about those, but it's going to be in farming areas to where you have water runoff and there's potential contamination from farming, whether it's fertilizers or just waste from the animals, things that can carry viruses and these bacteria that can be harmful to you, that your filter's not going to filter out. 0.1 micron is quite small. It's not small enough to disinfect everything. I mean, chlorine, chlorine gas is one thing, but like sodium hypochlorite solution, like the bleach, household bleach, that's not going to kill everything either. Trust me, that's kind of what I do for a living. I know there are certain like cryptoviruses and things that's not going to disinfect. You essentially need something like UV, ultraviolet light, to really get to. Anyways, I'm getting off track again. But those areas are going to be farm runoff areas to where you'll see this nice, really cool looking creek and you're like, man, it would be great. Yeah, I'll get some water here, but you'll realize that that's not a place that's safe to just filter water. They will usually recommend chemically treating it. And there are other, like Aquamura uses different types of chemical treatment. It's just not chlorine bleach, but it disinfects more than just what a 0.1 micron filter will catch. And the other time that you're going to run into problems is two other things I can think of. One is a pooling spring that is not running. So say the pooling spring has gone stagnant and it's just stopped. There's water there, but because it has stopped, that's also sort of a hotbed for all kinds of microorganisms to be doing their thing in there that could potentially make you sick. So that's something you would want to chemically treat because they're so small your filter's not going to catch them, but a lot of chemical treatment will kill those microorganisms. And the other time that I can remember is, and I only remember one shelter like this, and they had as their water source for a shelter. Most shelters have a good water source. This particular one, it was a cistern. So it basically collected rainwater. and rainwater is good to go. However, it goes down into a cistern to where it sits stagnant, and all kinds of microorganisms can potentially breed, and it can be things that are harmful to you. So you need to treat water like that. So basically, if water is either in a low-lying area and there's farmland around, treat your water. Or if it's stagnant, you need to treat your water. And don't get water out of a pond, if you can help it, because that's stagnant water. And again, you have microorganisms that can be a problem. But anyways, that's my piece on that. So there is a benefit to chemically treating over filtering, but having that backup, because it's so uncommon to actually have it be necessary to treat water, just have a little backup. Even if you have to wait 4 hours, if you decide to stop at a shelter that has a cistern as the water source, it won't be the end of the world. Yeah, the water's not going to taste great because it's treated. It's not going to taste as good as fresh spring water. You're going to get really spoiled on fresh spring water out there and become a water snob, I promise you. I still love that water. Like, I can't even drink water out of a tap. Which brings me to my next point, and that is carrying these little packets of flavors. And the reason I carried these, one, I carried caffeinated variety of these to get my caffeine in the morning because I didn't have a cook set, so I wasn't making coffee. And even without a cook set, you can actually use instant coffee cold, but I've already been over my reason I don't like instant coffee. Anyways, the caffeinated ones are good in the morning. These are good. I never really used these while I was hiking. However, when I got to town and you're just so spoiled on that nice, delicious, fresh spring water that's just got the right minerals in it and it tastes great, you're going to get to town and the water that comes out of the faucet, yeah, you also need to drink water in town, especially me because I was drinking copious amounts of beer. You're going to get water out of the faucet, and it's going to taste like you're drinking water out of the swimming pool down at the Y. I promise you. So get some flavor packets. They make it better. Some people liked these on the trail because it was something sweet. Most of them are sugar-free. They've got artificial sweeteners, but it's something sweet, and it's something different than water if you get tired of water, though I never got tired of that nice, fresh spring water. So they're definitely good to have and keep. And another thing, when you get to town, you're going to be so used to drinking out of your smart water bottles. That's what you're going to drink out of. So keep in mind, those are not going to fit under most sinks. You're going to be at a hotel that was probably last renovated in the early 1960s, at least if it was an affordable hotel, which is what most thru hikers will stay at. You're not going to be able to fit your smart water bottle under that. So you're going to be tempted to use your scoop, your little cup that you have. That's all good. You can use this. Clean it out really well with soap and water for a good long time, just in case anything from the dirty water you collected in this remains. And it's good to clean it out anyways, just for peace of mind. But before you do that, before you use this to pour into your smart water bottle in a hotel, definitely clean it out. Most hotels, of course, will have little coffee cups or something you can use. And almost every hostel, you just ask somebody. A lot of them, they know what's up. Everybody's filling smart water bottles. Not really a problem at hostels, but at hotels, just keep that in mind. It's something to keep in mind. You never want to cross-contaminate your water because then your clean water bottle becomes something that could potentially not be safe to drink out of. So keep that in mind. The next thing I'm going to talk about was an absolute game-changing thing for me on the trail. And I can only think of two game-changing things I had on the trail. One, I talked about in my food video, and that was starting to eat oatmeal every morning. That just gave me way more energy and stuck with me so much longer than anything else. And two was the discovery of this. It's made by Hammer Nutrition, and I am in no way, shape, or form affiliated with Hammer Nutrition or any of that. I use a lot of their products. If you have ever gotten into endurance athletics, you're probably familiar with the brand whether you've used their stuff or not. And I do a lot of bike riding, mountain biking, road biking, stuff like that. So I like their gels. And I was actually, when I was cycling, because it's very humid here where I live in Florida, you sweat a lot. I was using a product that they make called Heed, which you mix into your water, and it's electrolytes, because you have to replace those electrolytes when you sweat. You have to, trust me. And the trail is a very humid place too. So, but Heed, the problem with that, which it works really good if you're just going to mix it into a water bottle and you're not hiking the trail, you just mix it up and it's good to go, but it's a powder and you got to mix it up. So I got on their website and discovered Enduralites. I bought a bottle of these and just had them sent to a trail town. These are the Enduralite Extreme, and they worked out so well. They make a just Enduralites variety, which is basically the difference is the Enduralite Extreme is 3 times the electrolytes that the normal Enduralites are. So if you're not doing as much, the normal Enduralites are good to go. I use those now, but I found that when I started using these, I stayed hydrated for so much longer. I didn't drink as much water, and I really didn't even notice it. Like I knew I knew I needed electrolytes. Like your body starts telling you, you're craving salt, which is one of the electrolytes you need, but you need other electrolytes and you need them balanced. So it's good to, you don't have to use these in particular. There's other things out there. Another popular one was Noon. It's Nuun, and they come in like a tube, and you add them to your water. That just seemed like more work, and it cost more money than to just take one of these. And this is just simply a little caplet that you can take, and I would only take one of these usually in the morning. And if it was an extremely humid day, I was sweating a lot, and I had, really worked hard getting up several mountains or whatever it was, I would take one at night too to help replace the electrolytes that I had lost. But I started taking them in the morning, and it absolutely changed how I felt while I was hiking once it started getting humid. So definitely check these things out. It totally changed my hike. I didn't realize it changed my hike so much until I had gotten kind of on a regimen. It'll take like a couple of days for you to really notice it. But then I forgot to take one morning, and it was a hot day in Virginia. And I remember, I didn't even know that I'd forgotten to take one. But that day, like my quads were kind of burning, and I just felt weak, like more weak than I normally would for whatever reason. And I remembered that I just didn't, have any Enduralites or an electrolyte or whatever. And so I took one the next day, and I was good to go. I don't know what it is. It just worked out really well. So it's something definitely worth checking out. It's, they sell them online. I'll put a link to their website in the description. And if you're into endurance athletics in general, like they have a lot of good stuff. They don't use any kind of like artificial colors, sweeteners, preservatives, all that. Pretty good to go, pretty legit stuff. And they've been around for a long time. So it's good to go. I really, really recommend these things. I'm telling you, like, tell other hikers, share this video, whatever you got to do. Bring these. Stuck Norris and I would get a bottle at a time and split them up, and you can just put it into a Ziploc bag and put it in your food bag and try to remember to take at least one every day during the hot, humid days. And this will really help so much with helping to keep your electrolytes where they need to be, which your muscles absolutely need to work properly. And it just makes you feel so, I don't know. They worked extremely well. So I'll leave that alone. So the last thing, the only other thing I want to cover in this video is, should you treat and or purify your water? Yes. There were a lot of people that decided to stop doing that. And probably most of them didn't have any ill effects if they were smart about where they got their water. However, there were people that ended up with stuff like Giardia. And if you don't know anything about that, find somebody that's ever had Giardia and ask them how that is. And I guarantee you, if you're 2 days from a town north or south of you you don't want to have Giardia out on the trail. So definitely filter or treat your water. And a big misconception that people have is that, oh, well, this water's clean. It's coming out of a spring. It's good. Well, you don't know if that water's exposed somewhere higher up. And then it goes into the ground. And the ground's a great filter. But there's possibility it doesn't catch everything. There could be a dead animal laying in the origin of that water source. And then it goes underground. It comes out at a spring. Or if you're at a creek or a stream or anything like that, there could be all kinds of things that contaminate that water. Definitely treat your water. I don't care how invincible you think you are. Treat or filter your water. Do something to help protect yourself from getting any kind of contamination. Trust me, you do not want that out on the trail. So keep that in mind. You just never know. You just never know. And that can really, throw a wrench in the machine on your hike. So, filter or treat your water. That's all there is to it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up. For the 25th time, treat or filter your water. Trust me, you'll be glad you did. It's not that much trouble. As you saw, there's pretty easy methods to do it. Just do it. It's really simple. You'll be glad you did. So, we good on that, everybody? Everybody good on that? You? All right. How many of y'all shook your heads? All right. I got to keep myself entertained somehow here. I mean, I'm staring at a camera in a kitchen. That's all right. Enough about that. What kind of beer am I drinking? Tonight's variety is the Bimini Twist IPA. It's by Three Daughters Brewing. It's the first time I've had it. It's pretty good. They're out of St. Petersburg, Florida. And it is 7% alcohol by volume, and it's 82 IPU. So if you're not into hoppy beer, it's probably not for you. But anyways, thanks everybody for watching. If you have any questions, leave them below. Any comments, leave them below. Plenty more content coming, so if you liked it, definitely give it a thumbs up and let me know that you liked it. So thanks for watching again, and I'll see you in the next video.